what happens when the wolf you were born to be is locked away by the very people who should have protected you. For Elara of the Silvercrest pack, life had always meant staying small. An Omega, the lowest rank in a world where power determined everything. Where alphas ruled with iron wills and beta enforcers kept order, she existed in the shadows, silent, invisible, forgotten. She worked the kitchens during pack ceremonies, kept her eyes down when warriors passed, and learned early that survival meant accepting her place. Her wolf was quiet, barely a whisper in her mind, and the other Omegas whispered that perhaps she didn't have one at all. A broken wolf for a broken girl. But when Theron, alpha heir to Silvercrest, her fated mate whose bond had snapped into place on her 18th birthday, rejected her in front of the entire pack at the Harvest Moon ceremony, everything changed. And what happens next, no one was prepared for. The ceremony had been beautiful once. Strings of silver lanterns hung between ancient oaks, their light dancing across hundreds of wolves gathered in the sacred clearing. The autumn air carried the scent of roasted meat and spiced wine, of pine smoke and excitement. This was the night when mates were announced, when bonds were celebrated, when the moon goddess herself was said to watch from above. Elara had felt the pull for weeks. Ever since her birthday, something had drawn her toward Theron like iron to a lodestone. The bond hummed beneath her skin, whispered promises in her dreams. She'd told no one. Who would believe that an Omega could be fated to an Alpha? But the bond didn't lie. She felt his emotions like echoes of her own, tasted his scent on every breeze. Forest and embers, ozone and steel. He smelled like power, like storms about to break. She dared to hope, just this once. Alpha Cedric stood at the heart of the clearing, Theron at his right hand. The Alpha heir cut an imposing figure, tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair gleaming in the lantern light, his eyes the color of amber. He wore the ceremonial leathers of his rank, marked with the silver wolf of Silvercrest. Every unmated female in the pack watched him with hunger. Seraphine, daughter of the Beta, stood closest, her beauty as sharp as a blade. She smelled of cinnamon and iron, her ambition a tangible thing. "The moon goddess binds us," Alpha Cedric announced, his voice carrying across the gathering. "Tonight, we honor those bonds. Those who have found their mates, step forward." Elara's heart hammered. The bond pulled. Theron's eyes swept the crowd, and for one blazing moment, they locked with hers. Recognition flared. The scent of lavender and morning dew, her scent, reached him across the distance, and she saw his nostrils flare. He knew. He knew. Time stopped. Then Theron's jaw hardened. His scent shifted, ozone sharpening into the bitter tang of disgust. He turned to his father and spoke, his voice pitched to carry. "I invoke my right as Alpha heir to formally reject an unsuitable bond." The gathering went silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. "An Omega," Theron continued, each word precise as a knife, "has attempted to claim a bond with me. The moon goddess makes mistakes. I will not bind myself to weakness. I will not dilute the Alpha bloodline with inferior genetics. I reject this bond. I reject this wolf. I reject—" His eyes found her again, cold and final. Elara of Silvercrest. The bond snapped, not gently, not like a thread breaking, like a rope pulled taut until it frayed, until each individual fiber screamed and tore, until the severing ripped through her chest and left a gaping wound where warmth had been. Elara gasped, stumbling. Her knees hit the ground. Around her, wolves backed away, as if her humiliation might be contagious. Pain. White-hot and absolute. The mate bond, once formed, was a sacred thing. woven into the very fabric of a wolf's soul. To reject it was to tear out a piece of yourself. To be rejected was to have your mate rip out a piece of you and discard it like garbage. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to shed. "Guards," Alpha Cedric said quietly, not unkindly, but with the finality of judgment. "Remove her from Pack lands. An Omega without a bond is a liability. She has until dawn to be beyond our borders." Strong hands gripped her arms. Beta wolves, their faces impassive. They hauled her to her feet, began dragging her toward the forest edge. The crowd parted like water, none meeting her eyes. Even other Omegas looked away. "Wait." Her voice cracked. "My parents." She spotted them in the crowd. Her father, a mid-ranking Beta. Her mother, formerly of another pack. They stood frozen, her mother's hand over her mouth, her father's face carved from stone. She smelled their fear, their shame. "Please," Alara whispered. Her father turned away first, then her mother. The guards didn't slow. Orchestrated emotional narrative arc with casting and peril sequences. They threw her beyond the border markers, carved stones that delineated Silvercrest territory, with nothing but the thin ceremonial dress she wore. Autumn in the northern territories was unforgiving. The temperature had already dropped with sunset, and the night promised frost. "Go," one guard said, not quite able to look at her. "Don't come back." She watched them disappear into the trees, taking the distant glow of lanterns and the sound of resumed celebration with them. The forest closed around her like a fist. Alara walked because staying still meant freezing. Her bare feet bled on the frozen ground. Her wolf, always so quiet, was now utterly silent, shocked into stillness by the severing. She was alone in a way she'd never been before. The bond's absence was a void, a black hole that swallowed everything warm. The wind picked up. She smelled snow on the air, that peculiar metallic sharpness that meant a storm was coming. A bad one. She should have been terrified, should have been planning, strategizing, fighting for survival. Instead, she felt oddly detached, as if she were watching someone else stumble through the darkening woods. The pain in her chest had spread, a numbness creeping through her limbs. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had lost meaning. The snow started as flurries, delicate and almost beautiful. Then the wind turned vicious, and the flurries became a wall of white. A blizzard, sweeping down from the northern peaks with winter's full fury. Alara's dress offered no protection. Her skin turned blue, her teeth chattered so hard she bit her tongue and tasted blood. She needed shelter. Through the whiteout, she glimpsed a darker shadow, a structure of some kind. She staggered toward it, fell twice, dragged herself forward on hands and knees. An old barn, half collapsed, its roof sagging but still mostly intact. She crawled through the broken door into darkness that smelled of rotted hay and abandonment. It was marginally better than outside. The wind couldn't reach her here, but the cold seeped up from the ground, settled into her bones. She curled into the smallest ball she could manage, tucked into a corner where the roof looked most solid. Her body shook violently. "This is it," she thought distantly. "This is where I die." She'd always imagined death would be dramatic somehow, heroic maybe, or at least quick. She hadn't expected it to be so quiet, so slow, so cold. The numbness spread. Her shaking slowed. That was bad, she knew. It meant her body was giving up, conserving what little heat remained for her vital organs. It wouldn't be enough. Strange, but she wasn't afraid anymore. Just tired. So tired. Her eyes drifted closed. She didn't hear them approach, didn't sense them until warmth, blessed, impossible warmth pressed against her side. Her eyes fluttered open. Wolves. Massive wolves surrounded her in the darkness. Not the normal size of pack wolves, but far larger, their shoulders level with a tall man's chest. Their eyes glowed in the dim light filtering through the barn's cracks, silver and gold, and shades that had no name. 1, 2, 3. She counted through her fading consciousness. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 enormous wolves arranged in a protective circle around her, their body heat driving back the killing cold. The closest one, a massive male with fur the color of midnight and eyes like molten silver, pressed against her more firmly, sharing his warmth without reservation. This had to be a dream, a hallucination. Wolves didn't do this, didn't protect strangers, especially not rogues, which was what she was now. Packless, bondless, worthless. But the warmth was real. The steady rise and fall of their breathing was real. One by one, her shivering eased. Blood began to flow properly again. The void in her chest where the bond had been still ached, but the immediate threat of death receded. The midnight wolf shifted slightly, and she caught his scent. Aged oak and winter snow, pine, and the sharp ozone of an approaching storm. It was a scent that spoke of ancient forests and older magic, of power that didn't need to announce itself. "Sleep," a voice rumbled, deep and textured, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. "You're safe now." She wanted to ask questions, wanted to understand, but exhaustion pulled at her, and for the first time in hours, maybe for the first time in her life, she felt safe enough to let go. She slept. When Alara woke, pale dawn light streamed through the barn's broken boards. The storm had passed, leaving the world hushed and white. The wolves were still there, still surrounding her in their protective circle. In daylight, they were even more magnificent and more impossible. Their size defied nature. Their eyes held intelligence far beyond animal awareness, and their presence here, guarding an exiled Omega through a deadly blizzard, made no sense at all. The midnight wolf watched her with those silver eyes. Then, as she stared, he began to change. Shifting was supposed to hurt. Every wolf knew that. Bones breaking and reforming, skin stretching, the fundamental reshaping of one form into another. It was agony, especially the first few times. But this wolf's shift was different. Fluid. His massive form seemed to flow like water, darkness condensing and reshaping into a man who knelt before her. He was older than she'd expected, maybe 40, with silver threading through black hair, scars crossing his face and visible on his bare chest. But those same silver eyes remained, and that scent of oak and winter and power. "We've been waiting for you," he said quietly. Alara's voice came out as barely a whisper. "I don't understand." "I know." He reached slowly, giving her time to pull back, and when she didn't, he gently touched her forehead. His fingers were warm. "But you will. My name is Kyle, and these—" He gestured to the other wolves, who watched with varying expressions of curiosity and something that looked almost like reverence. "Are the Shadowborn. We are your guard. We have been for a very long time." "My guard?" She almost laughed. "I'm nobody, an Omega, rejected, packless. You are so much more than that." Kyle's expression was gentle but absolutely certain. "You are the one the prophecy spoke of. The one we've searched for across 3 generations. Prophecy." The word felt foreign in her mouth. "An old one. Older than any pack can remember." He settled back on his heels, his presence somehow both commanding and comforting. "When the daughter of wolves is cast into winter's embrace, the matriarch will rise. She will be marked by betrayal and born again in ice. She will come when packs have forgotten the old ways, when hierarchy has become tyranny, when power is measured only in strength of claw and fang, and she will remind the wolf world what true power is. A shiver ran through her that had nothing to do with cold. That's not me. That can't be me. Your wolf is silent, isn't it? Kyle asked. Always has been. Barely more than a whisper, even on your best days. She nodded mutely. That's because she was bound. Locked away before you were old enough to remember. Your parents did it when you were an infant. The words hit like physical blows. What? They were afraid. Another voice, feminine and warm. One of the wolves had shifted. A woman with auburn hair and amber eyes, wrapped now in furs that had appeared from nowhere. Your mother and father. They saw what you could become, and they were terrified. So they went to a dark witch, one who deals in blood magic, and they paid her to bind your wolf, to lock away your power until the binding could be broken. But why? Ilara's hands clenched in the rotted hay. Why would they do that? Kale's expression was sad. Because you're not an Omega, Ilara. You never were. You're something far more powerful, far more rare. And in a world where alphas rule absolutely, where might makes right, a female with your kind of power would be seen as a threat. Your parents thought they were protecting you. They thought if you lived small and quiet, you'd be safe. They were wrong, the auburn-haired woman said softly. The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes. She put you exactly where you needed to be. That rejection, her eyes held sympathy. That brutal, public rejection, it shattered the binding. Pain that intense, betrayal that complete, from the one wolf who should have treasured you above all others. It was the key that unlocked your cage. As if on cue, something stirred in Ilara's chest. Not the void where the bond had been, that still ached, but deeper, in the space where her wolf had always hidden. A presence, growing stronger by the moment. Hello, a voice said in her mind. Rich and powerful and utterly foreign, yet completely familiar. I've waited so long to speak with you. Ilara gasped. I can hear her. Yes. Kyle smiled, and it transformed his scarred face into something almost beautiful. Your wolf is waking up, and when she fully emerges, Ilara, you'll understand everything. You'll understand why we've searched for you, why we've waited, why the old prophecy called you the matriarch, the mother of wolves, the queen who will restore balance. Listen to them, her wolf purred. They speak truth, and I am so very hungry to be free. What do I do? Ilara looked between Kale and the woman, then at the other wolves who still held their animal forms, watching with those too intelligent eyes. You let go, Kyle said simply. You stop trying to be small. You stop accepting what others decided you should be. You remember that you are a child of the moon goddess, and she does not create weakness. He stood, offering her his hand. And when you're ready, you shift, not into the broken wolf they told you that you were, into the one you've always been. Ilara stared at his hand. Taking it would mean accepting this impossible story, accepting that her entire life had been a lie, accepting that her parents had crippled her out of fear, that Theron had rejected his true mate because he couldn't see past hierarchy and tradition, that she was meant for something more than invisibility. It would mean choosing to hope again. And hope, she'd learned, was the most dangerous thing of all. But what was the alternative? Crawl back to Silvercrest and beg for scraps. Wander the wilderness until she truly did freeze or starve. Live small and quiet and safe until she simply stopped living? Choose yourself, her wolf urged. Choose us. Choose power. Alara took Kyle's hand. His grip was strong, steady, and when he pulled her to her feet, she didn't stumble. The Shadowborn, she could feel them now. Their presence, like a chord of music resonating in her chest, drew closer. Protective. Expectant. How do I shift? She asked. You already know, Kyle said. Your wolf knows. Trust her. Alara closed her eyes, reached inward to that growing presence. Her wolf rose to meet her, no longer a whisper, but a roar. And when they touched, power erupted. This wasn't the shift she'd been taught to expect. There was no breaking, no agony. Instead, her bones flowed like water, reshaping themselves with a rightness that sang through every cell. Her skin prickled as fur emerged, not the dull brown she'd always assumed she'd have, but a coat that shimmered between silver and white, and something that caught the light like starshine. She grew and grew and grew. The barn's ceiling, already low, suddenly seemed confining. She had to duck her head, and even then, her ears brushed rotted wood. Beside her, Kale in his human form barely came to her shoulder. The other Shadowborn, still in wolf form, looked up at her with satisfaction. Energy crackled across her fur, little arcs of silver light that reflected in every eye watching. Her paws, massive, tipped with claws like ivory daggers, kneaded the ground. Power thrummed through her, begging to be released. This, her wolf exulted, this is what we were meant to be. Alara threw back her head and howled. The sound shattered the morning quiet. It rolled across the snow-covered forest, through valleys and over hills, carrying with it a declaration that needed no words. I am here. I am awake. I am coming. In Silvercrest territory, miles away, every wolf stopped mid-motion. Alpha Cedric's head snapped up, his coffee cup slipping from suddenly numb fingers. Theron, who'd been sparring in the training grounds, froze as the howl washed over him, and for the first time since the rejection, felt the echo of what he'd lost. In the barn, the Shadowborn answered Alara's call with howls of their own, a chorus of voices welcoming their matriarch home. The sound was beautiful and terrible and right. When the echoes faded, Alara shifted back. The change was effortless now, her human form returning as easily as breathing. She stood naked in the winter morning, steam rising from her skin, and felt no cold at all. The power that had filled her wolf form still hummed through her human body, warming her from within. The auburn-haired woman stepped forward with furs, helping Alara wrap herself. Welcome back, matriarch. I don't even know your name, Alara said, her voice steady in a way it had never been before. I'm Lyssa, the woman smiled, second of the Shadowborn, and your advisor in matters of politics and pack law. The grumpy one over there. She nodded to a gray wolf with scars across his muzzle. Is Maddox, your weapons master. The twins, Cora and Kira, handle intelligence and reconnaissance. Finn is our tracker, Rowan our healer, Thane our strategist, Oren our diplomat, and Sable is the youngest, but perhaps the most viciously protective of us all. As Lyssa spoke each name, the corresponding wolf dipped their head in acknowledgement. A wave of affection washed over Alara. These wolves, strangers mere hours ago, felt like family in a way Silvercrest never had. And Kale? She asked, turning to the scarred man who still watched her with those silver eyes. I'm yours, he said simply. Commander of the Shadowborn, guardian bound by prophecy, and, if you'll have me, your chosen mate. The words should have been presumptuous, should have made her recoil after Theron's rejection. But the bond that formed wasn't anything like what she'd felt with Theron. That had been fate, the moon goddess's design, a connection she'd had no choice in. This was different. This was a choice freely offered and freely accepted. A bond built not on destiny, but on recognition, on seeing and being seen. "I barely know you," she said, but she was smiling. "Then we have time to learn." Kyle's answering smile was warm. "We have all the time you need." Days turned to weeks. The barn became a base, then a home, as the Shadowborn used their considerable resources to make it livable. Ilara learned that they weren't just wolves. They were the descendants of an ancient bloodline, guardians appointed by the moon goddess herself to serve the matriarch when she finally arose. "There hasn't been a matriarch in over 300 years, Lyssa explained one evening as they sat around a fire. The last one died, protecting the packs from a great darkness. Before she fell, she prophesied that another would come, born in a time of need, marked by betrayal." "And you've all been waiting?" Ilara asked. "For 3 centuries? Not us personally." Maddox had shifted to human form, a mountain of a man with more scars than clear skin. "But our bloodline, the knowledge passed from parent to child, the oath renewed with each generation. We knew you'd come. We just didn't know when or where." Kale sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. That simple contact had become familiar, comforting. "We felt it the night of your rejection, the binding breaking, power flowing free. We've been searching for weeks, following the trail of your awakening. And if the blizzard hadn't driven me into that barn, we would have found you anyway." His certainty was absolute. "The moon goddess led you to us, just as surely as she led us to you." The training started in earnest after that. Ilara discovered that her abilities went far beyond simply being large and powerful in wolf form. She could feel other wolves' emotions like physical sensations. Their fear tasted like copper, their joy like honey on her tongue. She could soothe injuries with a touch, her power flowing through her hands like warm water, knitting torn flesh and mending broken bones. And when she commanded, even the most dominant alphas would struggle to resist. "You're an empath, a healer, and a natural alpha of alphas," Rowan said, after a particularly intense training session. The healer was a slight man in human form, but his wolf was massive and his knowledge encyclopedic. "The matriarch is meant to balance the packs, to remind them that power isn't just about domination, it's about protection, nurturing, wisdom." "Theron would hate that," Ilara murmured. "Theron is a fool." Kale's voice held no particular heat, just statement of fact. "He chose ambition over destiny. He'll live with that choice for the rest of his life." Ilara found she didn't hate Theron, didn't even particularly think about him, except in passing moments. The void where their bond had been was healing, filling instead with the chosen bonds she was building, with Kale, with the Shadowborn, with her wolf, who was no longer silent, but a constant, vibrant presence. "Try again," Lyssa encouraged. They were working on shifting partially, just hands to claws, or calling forth her wolf's eyes without fully changing. Control was everything. Ilara breathed deep, centered herself, and felt her eyes change. When she opened them, she knew they glowed that supernatural silver that marked her as other, as more. "Perfect," Lyssa approved. "Now hold it while you move." They sparred. Lyssa in full wolf form, Ilara in human form, but with wolf eyes and enhanced speed. It was a dance, a game, and Ilara laughed as she dodged and weaved. Confidence had grown in her like a flower reaching for sun. She wasn't the broken Omega anymore. She was becoming who she was always meant to be. "Again!" Cora and Kira called in unison. The twins were watching from a fallen log, their wolf forms nearly identical, except Cora had white markings on her left paw and Kira on her right. The spar continued until Alara managed to pin Lisa, no small feat, and the gathered Shadowborn erupted in cheers and howls. "You're ready," Kale said that night. They sat on the barn's repaired roof, watching stars wheel overhead. The bond between them had deepened day by day, not the frantic pull of a fated mate, but something steadier. Chosen love. Ready for what? To face them. His profile was stern in the moonlight. "Silvercrest will have to acknowledge you eventually, and when they do, we need to be prepared." "I don't want revenge," Alara said quietly. "I know. But you deserve justice, and the Packs need to see that there are consequences for cruelty, for throwing away what the goddess gives them." He turned to her, his silver eyes intense. "You don't have to diminish yourself to make others comfortable anymore." She leaned against him, his warmth and scent wrapping around her. "I'm scared." "Good. Fear keeps you cautious. But don't let it stop you from claiming what's yours." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "You're the matriarch. This entire territory is yours by right. Silvercrest, Shadowpine, Ironwood, every pack in the northern range. They just don't know it yet." 2 days later, Finn returned from a reconnaissance run with news. "Scout from Silvercrest crossed our border. He saw Alara in wolf form." The temperature in the barn seemed to drop. Alara's wolf stirred, hackles rising. "How long before they come?" "Tomorrow, maybe the day after." Finn was a lean wolf, with russet fur and a tracker's sharp eyes. He ran fast. "By now Theron knows you're alive. Knows you're different. Let them come." Alara stood, power crackling around her like heat lightning. "It's time." They arrived at dawn. Not a small scouting party, but a war band, over 20 wolves, with Theron at their head and Seraphine at his flank. Alpha Cedric had stayed behind, which told Alara everything she needed to know. The Alpha heir was making his own play, independent of his father's authority. The Shadowborn had chosen their ground carefully, a clearing bordered by ancient trees, with the barn at their backs and escape routes on all sides if needed. Not that they'd need them. Alara waited in human form, dressed in leather and fur that Lissa had procured. She looked like a queen already, regal and powerful, with her hair unbound and her eyes glowing that telltale silver even in human shape. Kyle stood at her right hand, Lissa at her left, and the rest of the Shadowborn arrayed behind them in human form. They wanted Theron to see them as they were, to understand exactly what he was facing before the fight began. Theron's war party emerged from the trees and stopped. She watched Theron's eyes find her, watched them widen with shock. Her scent had changed. Lavender and morning dew were still there, but now laced with power, with wildflower meadows and summer storms, with something fundamentally other. "Alara," his voice carried across the clearing. "You're alive." "Disappointed?" she asked mildly. He dismounted from his wolf form, shifting to human with practiced ease. He looked the same, handsome, powerful, every inch the Alpha heir. But now she could see the cracks in his confidence, the uncertainty in his scent. Forest and embers, yes, but laced now with something bitter. Regret, maybe. "I thought you died in the blizzard," he said. "You threw me into that blizzard." He faltered. The rejection was necessary. For whom? Seraphine shifted then, standing at Theron's shoulder. Her beauty was sharp, as always, her ambition palpable. "An Omega has no business challenging an Alpha," she said coldly. "You should have accepted your rejection with grace." Grace? Alara's laugh was genuine. "You wanted me to be grateful? To thank Theron for tearing out my soul in front of everyone I'd ever known?" "You weren't good enough for him," Seraphine hissed. Everyone knows it. Then why are you here? Kyle's voice cut through the tension like a blade. If she's so insignificant, why bring 20 warriors? Theron's jaw tightened. We came to bring her back. The pack has a responsibility. I don't want your responsibility. Alara stepped forward, and a wave of power washed over the clearing. Theron's wolves whimpered, struggling to hold their forms. Even Theron stumbled back a step. I don't want anything from Silvercrest except this. Stay out of my territory. Your territory, Seraphine snarled. You're nobody. She lunged. It was a stupid move, driven by pride and fury, and Seraphine was fast. But Alara was faster. She didn't even shift. Simply sidestepped, caught Seraphine's arm as she passed, and used the woman's own momentum to slam her into the ground with crushing force. The impact drove the air from Seraphine's lungs, left her gasping. Alara crouched beside her, one hand pinning Seraphine's throat. She let her eyes glow brighter, let power roll off her in visible waves. I am the daughter of the moon goddess. I am the matriarch. I am the one the prophecy spoke of, the one who will remind you all what true power looks like. She leaned closer. And you, Seraphine, are nothing. She released the beta's daughter and stood. Seraphine scrambled away, fear in her eyes, her scent sharp with terror. Anyone else? Alara asked the gathered wolves. Silence. Then the Shadowborn shifted. It was synchronized, beautiful, and absolutely terrifying. 10 wolves. No, not wolves. These were dire wolves, creatures of legend, each one larger than any alpha in Theron's warband. Their eyes glowed with ancient power, their forms crackling with the same silver light that marked Alara. They ringed the clearing, a wall of protection around their matriarch, and the message was clear. Touch her, and you die. Theron's wolves broke. One by one, they dropped to their bellies. Submission written in every line of their bodies. Even Theron wavered, fighting his own instinct to kneel. Please, the words seemed torn from him. Mercy. Alara looked at him, really looked, saw the boy who'd been raised to value strength above all, who'd been taught that showing weakness was death, who'd rejected his true mate because admitting he could love an Omega would shatter his carefully constructed world. She could destroy him, could kill him where he stood, or worse, could make him live with the knowledge of what he'd lost, could take Silvercrest territory by force, scatter his pack to the winds, end his family's lineage. Justice or vengeance, the choice was hers. I could kill you, she said quietly. All of you. No one would question my right. I know. Theron's voice was hoarse. But I'm not a tyrant. I'm not an alpha who rules by fear and domination. She looked beyond him to his cowering wolves. The old ways taught that the matriarch was meant to balance, to heal, to remind the packs that strength comes in many forms, that Omegas aren't weak. They're empaths, healers, the heart of a pack. That dominance isn't the only measure of worth. She focused on Theron again. You and Silvercrest have forgotten that. You've created a hierarchy where only the strong survive, where compassion is seen as weakness, where anyone who doesn't fit your narrow definition of power is discarded. What do you want? Theron asked. Change. Alara let her glow intensify. Silvercrest will no longer exile Omegas or treat them as disposable. You will create laws protecting the vulnerable, the different, the overlooked. You will learn that true strength is using your power to protect, not to dominate. And if we refuse? Alara smiled, and it was not a kind expression. Then I will take Silvercrest by force. I will scatter your pack. I will make an example of you that every alpha in the Northern Territories will remember for generations. She paused. But I'd rather not. I'd rather you chose to be better." Silence stretched. Then, slowly, Theron dropped to one knee. "I submit to your judgment, matriarch." The title felt right on his tongue in a way that denied resistance. One by one, his wolves followed suit, even Seraphine, until the entire war party knelt before Ilara in the clearing where they'd come to recapture or kill her. "Rise," Ilara commanded, after a long moment. They obeyed. "Tell your Alpha Cedric that the matriarch has returned. Tell him that these lands are mine, from the northern peaks to the southern rivers, and that I expect him to attend me at the next full moon to discuss the new order." "Yes, matriarch," Theron said. "And Theron?" She met his eyes one last time. "I release you from any guilt over the rejection. You made your choice. Live with it, learn from it, and do better. That's all I ask." Something broke in his expression. Relief or grief or both. He bowed his head and shifted, his war party following suit, and they retreated into the forest without another word. When they were gone, Ilara's legs nearly gave out. Kyle caught her, his strength steadying. "Well done," he murmured. "Did I do the right thing?" she asked. "You chose justice over vengeance, wisdom over wrath." "Yes, love. You did exactly right." The Shadowborn converged, their presence a chorus of approval and pride. Lyssa shifted to human form, grinning. "That was magnificent. Did you see Seraphine's face?" "The way they all dropped to their knees," Maddox added. "Beautiful." "I thought I'd want revenge," Ilara admitted. "Thought I'd want to hurt him the way he hurt me." "But you're not him," Kale said. "That's the entire point. You're better." That night, they celebrated. Rowan had hunted earlier, and they roasted meat over a fire, while Cora and Kira sang old songs in harmonies that raised goosebumps. The moon rose full and silver, the goddess watching over her children, and Ilara felt complete in a way she never had before. Kale found her later, watching the stars from their favorite spot on the roof. "What are you thinking?" "That everything had to break before it could be remade," she said. "That the worst night of my life was actually the beginning of the best thing that ever happened to me." "The goddess works in mysterious ways." He settled beside her, his warmth a comfort. "Do you think Theron will actually change? That Silvercrest will?" "I think you gave him a chance to. Whether he takes it is up to him." Kyle turned her face toward his. "But you'll be watching. And if he fails, you'll be there to correct course." "No pressure then." But she was smiling. "You can handle it. You're the matriarch." He kissed her gently. When he pulled back, his eyes held question. "I meant what I said before. I'm yours if you'll have me. As mate, as partner, as whatever you need." "I choose you," Ilara said. "Not because fate demands it, but because you see me. The real me. Because you waited through lifetimes for someone you'd never met. Because you protected me when I had nothing. Because you make me want to be the queen everyone thinks I am." The bond snapped into place. But unlike with Theron, this didn't hurt. This was warmth spreading through her chest, light filling the void, a connection that felt like coming home. Kale's scent wrapped around her, as his arms did the same, and when they kissed again, power arced between them, silver light dancing across their skin. The Shadowborn, watching from below, howled their approval to the moon. And so Ilara's journey from Broken Omega to Matriarch was complete. But really, it was just beginning. She had reclaimed her power, found her family, and chosen her mate. She had shown mercy to those who'd shown her none, and proven that strength came in forms the Pax had forgotten. The old order was changing. The Northern Territories would learn that the matriarch had returned, and with her came a new age, one where Omegas were valued, where power was used to protect rather than dominate, where the moon goddess's children remembered what it meant to be pack. Would it be easy? No. Would every pack accept her authority willingly? Unlikely. But Alara had the Shadowborn at her back, Kyle at her side, and her own power blazing bright enough to challenge the stars. She was no longer the wolf no one was allowed to touch. She was the Lycan queen, the matriarch, the beginning of everything new. And in the distance, where starlight touched the horizon, something ancient stirred. The blood moon was coming. And with it, an evil older than the packs themselves. But that was a challenge for another day. Tonight, Alara stood on her barn roof with her chosen mate and her found family and felt nothing but joy. She had been cast into winter's embrace and been born again. She had been marked by betrayal and had chosen healing. She had been told she was nothing and had proven she was everything. The prophecy was fulfilled. The matriarch had risen, and the wolf world would never be the same. What did you think of Alara's transformation? Have you ever felt dismissed or underestimated, only to prove everyone wrong? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your own stories of finding your inner strength. If you enjoyed this tale, please hit that like button and share this video with anyone who loves stories of underdogs rising to power. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss the next chapter in Alara's story. Because trust me, her confrontation with the ancient evil awakening under the blood moon is going to be epic. The matriarch's first true test is coming, and it will shake the very foundations of the wolf world. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next